Welcome back to Big Mouth and welcome to Thursday's edition of the dceu Daily. Remember, you can tag me on Twitter and, of course, follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. I have no evidence of this. It is my opinion and my belief from bias, of course, because we're all biased within our opinions, that Batfleck will get his Logan movie written and directed by Ben Affleck himself. Why am I talking about this today? Because on Monday, it was announced that Ben Affleck would direct a Disney movie. What it's called, when it's happening, I couldn't give a shit. I don't care. All I care about is DC. This is the dceu Daily after all, and I'm here to talk about DC. But people have decided, because this is another project, and he's got 5 or 6 projects on the cards right now. They have decided that Ben Affleck will never return to do his movie. Now, we know he's returning for Flashpoint. These are the words of Barbara Machete, the sister of the director of Flashpoint, Andy Machete. When we asked him, we expected him to say no. We were so surprised how quickly he said yes, after everything he's been through. In fact, Barbara Machete said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" because she was concerned about his mental health. That just shows you what a great person and people the Machetes are. They didn't just wade in there and just take yes. They said, "Are you sure?" Ben is sure. Ben is excited. Ben has helped with the script. That's amazing. So, and by the way, Ben has delayed a couple of other projects to start shooting this in April, because that's when Flashpoint begins. And he will play a considerable role in this movie. And Barbara Machete, who does most of the talking, by the way, it's a great partnership between brother and sister. I like those two, by the way. She's liking people's comments. She's teasing some very, very exciting casting news, so that's exciting. Did Barbara and Andy take a picture of themselves wearing flash socks and reverse flash socks as well? So they're in this. They're really excited to be involved. And I'm really excited for the Flashpoint movie, because this is the movie that really is going to make a statement about the future of the DC Extended Universe. So, despite all these people walking around with their glass half empty, all these people who don't want Ben Affleck's Batman to have this final moment, this Logan movie. Listen, Zack Snyder was always going to kill off Ben Affleck's Batman. That was going to happen either in the second or third Justice League movie. I don't know how many they were going to make ultimately, but he was going to sacrifice himself for the greater good. That was going to happen. Now, of course, we don't know what the future holds, whether Zack Snyder will get to do more Justice League movies, or he'll just move on and we'll say, what a great trilogy, and we'll have to move on. If Zack and the studio don't want to do it, we'll just have to respect it. If Zack says he wants to do it and the studio don't, we can keep on fighting for it. This is how this game is played, right? But I don't believe that Ben Affleck doesn't want to tell his final tale. Because what you can do with a Batfleck movie is actually kill him off. As I say, do this whole type of Logan movie, not by copying anything that Logan did, but Ben Affleck can tell his Deathstroke story and he can die in that movie for the greater good. Or we can have that movie, and if Zack gets to do his at least second Justice League movie, but maybe he'll get a third as well, maybe that sacrifice can still be made. I don't know. So Ben Affleck hasn't got a long future as Batman anyway. We know that. So let him tell one more story. Let him do the Batman movie he was going to do, because it was clear he was going to be killed off. We know that now. There's no denying that. So Ben Affleck wasn't going to make movie after movie, sequel after sequel, being Justice League after Justice League movie. There was a plan. There was an arc. He was going to die. This is an actor and a director who wants to do a variety of projects in Hollywood, and that's totally acceptable. People can do whatever they want. If directing a Disney movie floats his boat, then fill your boots, Ben. It's not up to me to tell Ben Affleck who he works with and who he doesn't. But what I do believe wholeheartedly is, I think there's definitely a feeling within Warner Media and from Ben Affleck to tell this final story. And for people to say, no, not going to happen, too many projects, listen, I don't care if this happens in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, 4 years' time, or 5 years' time. There's no rush to do this. He's a considerable young man. Yeah, he's not in his 30s anymore. I think he's in his late 40s, maybe early 50s, whatever. So doing it at 55 is not bad. An old man Bruce Wayne still can work. But whenever they can do this, and whenever the schedule is freed up for him to do this, and for them to put a date on it, for them to tell us, because for him to come back in Flashpoint when he didn't have to do this. Now, of course, there are many, many rumours. I saw a monologue being written about Flashpoint literally undoing all the events of the Snyderverse. Now, I don't believe this is the case. I think some things from the Snyderverse may be undone, which will be very triggering to the fans. And it depends. Look, it depends what they undo. If they undo Zod's death, I'm comfortable with that. I don't care about that because I said the other day, one of the things I want to see in Flashpoint, if I could, and it's not a deal breaker, by the way, is undo that death anyway, because Michael Shannon Zod should be available to come back because he's a great villain. Would he want to? I don't know. So that's not necessarily a thing. So I thought that monologue was absolute fiction, but there are members of the Snyderverse who want to kind of create this hatred towards anything that's not Snyderverse. Now, I'm a Snyderverse fan, but I'm also a DC fan. And obviously, I repeat that every day because I want to clarify that I'm a balanced guy. I'm not part of a mob. I'm not someone with blinkered vision. I love my DC. I love my Snyderverse DC. But I love the animations and the TV series and different movies, even the movies considered to be bad DC movies like Green Lantern. I sat down yesterday afternoon and watched Green Lantern with my popcorn. I had a great time with it. Didn't overanalyze it like many of you do these days with your DC films. I just enjoyed it for what it was. Cool, right? Imagine if we could all do that. And so I do believe that Ben Affleck will be back to do his Batman movie. But again, that's my belief. That's my opinion. And it's all in bias. We're all biased towards these things. And as I've just said, they could actually end his story in Flashpoint. Now, if they end his story in the right way in Flashpoint, there's still a story to be told within the Batman Ben Affleck movie, because actually that Deathstroke story can be told within the past, within a flashback. So that can still happen. But definitely, I agree that Ben Affleck hasn't got a long future as Batman in the DC Extended Universe, even with the multiverse strategy, because we've already got Robert Pattinson's Batman, Michael Keaton's Batman is coming back. Apparently he's going to stay. He's got this Nick Fury role. I'm not sure I believe that. I'd love that. I'd love Henry Cavill to have that as well, despite saying Cavill doesn't want that. I think Cavill will be really happy to get movies and the kind of Nick Fury role as well. That would be pretty cool. It didn't happen in the end, but can still happen. Anything's possible. Things have to be clarified. At the moment, we don't know where we are with Cavill, and we don't know where we are with Affleck. Now, after I saw Justice League, I was convinced we'd never see Henry Cavill as Superman or Ben Affleck as Batman again. Because I looked at that film and I saw that horrible fake smile by Batfleck when Superman turns up to beat up Steppenwolf. It was cringy, and I thought, how can the damage from this be undone if we never see Zack Snyder's Justice League? But guess what? We are going to see Zack Snyder's Justice League. Hopefully, those of us who haven't got HBO Max in countries around the world will have the option of, pay-per-view digitally or buying it to keep on 4K and Blu-ray. I prefer that option. See it as a whole movie. 4 hours, popcorn, big TV, full blast volume. Yes, take my money now. But we'll see about that. So I was very triggered. Wasn't triggered that he's doing the Disney movie. I was triggered by people's attitudes. Also, it's not just from people who have a glass half full mentality. It's from people who don't actually want it to happen, so they're projecting what they want to happen. That's a different type of bias from us people who are biased towards wanting it to happen, so we're saying it's still going to happen. Now, we know there's people like the Culture Nerd About and Lightcast telling us that all these things are going to happen, and they've got nothing to back it up with apart from invisible sources. I agree, they're not good for the fandom. Now, there's a difference between false hope and no hope. And saying that fans should have no hope about this, and Ben Affleck's probably going to announce this after Flashpoint, blah, blah, blah. Listen, I don't know Ben Affleck. I don't know what he wants, but I do know he's a passionate Batman fan. I know he started this journey with Batman versus Superman and continued it with Zack Snyder's Justice League, which we're going to see this year. Very exciting. And I think he should at least have the stage to end his story. Now, whether that happens in Flashpoint or in the Batman movie, we will see. Now, if they finish it neat and tidy, maybe Ben won't want to make the Batman movie. But I think not seeing the script, but hearing about the script from Jay Oliver, I just think it would be a shame for us never to see that movie. It will be an almighty movie. The multiverse strategy heads to this, can help this happen because of these different Earths. I know that, and of course, there is a big situation here because, the DC Extended Universe has their Batman, and that is Ben Affleck. But if they kill him off and there's this Flashpoint thing, one of the Batmen can come into the DC Extended Universe. I doubt it'd be Robert Pattinson as the Batman because Matt Reeves is literally creating his own Earth and his own Batman family and his own Batman universe and really his own DC. This is what's happening. He's not just creating a Batman universe on this new Earth. He's creating a DC universe. That's something people are not talking about. We've seen the evidence already. With that fancy dress thing, with those different characters, like Wonder Woman and Superman, it's clear that those characters exist within this world, or maybe they're just comic book characters. We will see. But I do have a theory that Matt Reeves is creating his own DC universe within his own Earth for the Batman, and we've heard that they've appointed a showrunner for his Gotham PD show as well. Very exciting because they parted with the first one, who was a very good guy, by the way, because of creative differences. This is nothing new. This is nothing bad. This is nothing to be worried about. At the end of the day, as someone like Matt Reeves, who has a vision for something, he's got to be able to work with the right person. And it's just the same as working with a network, and the network saying, well, we've got creative differences, you're going to have to go. These things happen, and it's totally acceptable. But yeah, that's my opinion about that. And I just get triggered by people who are like, no, not happening now. Too many projects on. How can he do it? Things can be shuffled. We may have to wait a few years. But one way or the other, I believe this may or can happen. What I'm saying is to you, don't lose hope. What I'm saying to you, it is not off the table. Yeah, he may be killed off in Flashpoint, but then again, he may not be killed off in Flashpoint. And even if he is, he can still do this final story. His Logan must happen. And I believe in my heart, without any sources or anyone telling me otherwise, that it will happen. Before we continue with today's DCEU Daily, let's look at some other news going on. So Kevin Feige has come out of retirement to market WandaVision. So he's been saying a lot of things, but the biggest thing he said is that Deadpool 3 is happening and it will be R-rated. Now, I don't think you need to be a genius that there's been many, many creative differences between Ryan Reynolds and Kevin Feige and Disney and Marvel Studios. That's obvious. Now, Ryan Reynolds really had to fight for the R rating, I can tell you that much. And one person got really angry that we ever stated that there was an issue between Ryan Reynolds and Disney. And he said it was always going to be R rated. No. It wasn't always going to be R rated. They probably wanted to do a friendly little crossover with Spider-Man, just like the animation, which would have been fine at the end of the day. It's not what Ryan wants. It's not part of Ryan's vision. In fact, Ryan was joking, saying that he just told them it would be like, I showed them Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2 and told them that's Deadpool. A joke. But he's making the joke because of the mentality of Feige, Marvel Studios and Disney, where they want everything family-orientated. Now, this is going to be an R-rated movie. Now, how does this work within when it gets its release on Disney Plus eventually? Again, I've been saying for ages they need an adult kind of division of Disney Plus. And I think, from what I'm hearing, that will happen ultimately. So this is going to be a very interesting movie. Feige also said that this will be part of the MCU, which is very exciting, but everything's part of the MCU. He also said that they're still working out the kinks for the X-Men franchise. I think that means they don't know what to do with the X-Men franchise. And for me, that's staggering. Right, and finally today, let's talk about the Suicide Squad, because this year we've got Zack Snyder's Justice League in the DC universe, we've got James Gunn's Suicide Squad, and we've got James Gunn's Peacemaker. Now, personally, I'm very excited. Excuse me, every video I have to get a croaky throat. Do you know how much that annoys me when I'm in full swing? Anyway, I can't do anything about it. So let's continue, yeah. So I'm very excited. I'm happy that Peter Safran brought James Gunn on board. It was a really good move. It was a coup during a time when no one was touching James Gunn with a barge pole after he was moved out of Disney for his jokes about things, let's put it that way. But got his job back at Marvel with Guardians of the Galaxy 3, but Warner Brothers showed real faith in him. But ultimately, Peter Safran, went to bat for him with the studio, and the studio weren't hesitant at all. They were happy to bring in James Gunn. And James Gunn had this beautiful meeting, I can tell you, with Peter Safran and Walter Hamada. And they basically told James all their plans for the future of the DCEU. And they literally said, you can do any film you want, including a Superman movie, because James has actually said that he knows Walter Hamada's and Peter Safran's plans for the future of Superman, which is really interesting. So imagine if I could just shine a light in James Gunn's eye and say, what are they going to do? I really need to know. Anyway, so he didn't want to do Superman. In fact, he didn't want to do anything else but the Suicide Squad, and that's because he's got hundreds and hundreds of Suicide Squad comics. He loves Suicide Squad. He loves teams, and he's good at putting teams together, as we've seen with Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, from the sizzle reel, I was really excited. This guy knows how to make a good blockbuster movie. I believe this will be a better film than Wonder Woman 84. I think this will be a more successful film than Wonder Woman 84. What's important for James as well is, he will be having an HBO Max release, but it will be in theatres where they can be open. But this movie comes out in the peak of summer. So by then, many, many people will be vaccinated and more movie theatres in the United States and globally will be reopened. So there's a potential for a higher box office. Now, I don't know if the kind of release plan on HBO Max may be cancelled in the end if enough movie theatres are opened. And maybe that's something that Warner Media as a company and James Gunn can decide. But right now, it needs to happen with so many movie theatres being closed. But I am really excited for both James Gunn, the Suicide Squad, and Peacemaker. Because even by looking at the sizzle reel, and I've been watching it repeatedly in the past few weeks especially, but especially just after Fandom, this looks like a really good film. And I'm also fascinated, as I've said many times, in what is this guy's take on Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn. This is going to be interesting. We saw David Ayer with a great take and directed her beautifully. We then saw Margot's own take in Birds of Prey and the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn. Actually, I loved Harley in that film. I thought she was very entertaining. She worked. The animated opening is beautiful as well. The film does have its issues, but I think Harley was done pretty well. I think the focus was too much on Harley, if you ask me. But she definitely worked. But it is interesting to know what he's going to do with her. We've seen her kind of wearing a disguise. I think she's going into a restaurant or something. But nobody knows what his idea of Harley is. And, it's interesting because Bruce Timm co-created Harley for the Batman animated series. And I still think it's outrageous that he's had nothing creatively to do, even as a consultant, with kind of, educating them, consulting with them about who Harley Quinn is as a character. But I think in live action, anyway, they've done a good, accurate job with her. And Margot has been absolutely fantastic. And I've spoken before that maybe Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn could be killed off after the relationship breakdown between Margot Robbie and Walter Hamada and Peter Safran, just because of the elements that went wrong, behind the scenes of Birds of Prey. She brought in Kathy Yan. Kathy Yan had certain limitations, a really good director, but she wasn't proficient enough with action scenes, and they had to bring in the John Wick director. And so that became very, very problematic. And so there was kind of discourse between them. These things happen between studio heads and people running films. It's just the business. It's, again, not a big drama like some of you do make it in social media. But even if he kills nearly everyone in this film, Flashpoint can bring certain people back. So even if Harley dies in this film, it's a bit like Infinity War. You could kill all the characters that they did, and then in Endgame, you bring certain people back to life, as they did. But certain deaths did stick. It's the same here. In a lot of ways, the Flashpoint movie, the multiverse strategy, is our Endgame, to the point of it revitalized the franchise and it kind of relaunches it as well. I think Endgame kind of does that with the people who die in the film and what they do. And we've seen that there's a portion of Endgame that kind of gives an opportunity for the Loki story, straight to streaming TV show as well. So they've done that, which was a very smart move. In fact, the multiverse strategy over at the MCU was pretty much launched at Endgame if you were watching that film properly and closely. And so, yeah, I think that many people could be brought back if they're killed off, the important ones in James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. But I think what you're going to see in James Gunn's The Suicide Squad is a film with so much action, with so much character. One thing Gunn can do, he exudes personality, and he makes sure his actors exude personality. He casts certain people. So I'm really excited because I think this is going to be an old-fashioned blockbuster where a bunch of these misfits go on a mission. Some of them come back, some of them won't. And this is a team that are going to have to get to know each other, trust each other, and they probably don't trust each other at first. So I'm really excited for this movie. And what excites me even more is that James is involved and that nobody knows James as well. Nobody knows the Suicide Squad graphic novels as well as James Gunn, which again is really, really exciting. James Gunn is the kind of creative that you want. And, Feige was very clever to bring him on, and look what he's done on there. And I think James will be hungry to do more. He's already said he'll do more. James Gunn didn't have to do Peacemaker. He sat down with Hamada and Safran. They said, we would like you to do a spin-off because they're going to be doing spin-offs for all their movies, from here on in the future, right? And Walter Hamada already said that in that New York Times interview. So that's exciting as well. So we've got a great year. Zack Snyder's Justice League and James Gunn's The Suicide Squad and Peacemaker. That is good. Now, when you look at what they're doing over on Disney Plus, there's so many more MCU projects coming out on streaming and in theaters than we have over at DC. We've only got 3 projects, including Peacemaker. But that's enough for now, because next year we're going to have as many projects as they will. We will have 4 theatrical movies to be released in 2022, and then however many projects there will be on HBO Max as well, including a spin-off, including, actually proper, HBO Max DC series as well. Probably the Green Lantern show will be ready to go next year as well, which will be really exciting. So even though we've only got 3 projects this year, that should be enough. And Zack Snyder's Suicide Squad, that'll be interesting, wouldn't it? But Zack Snyder's Justice League is going to create so much conversation. And before I go today, on this Thursday on the DCEU Daily, I'd like to say one thing. I know Snyder is like Marmite. Some of us like him, some of us don't. I like him. I think he's brilliant, and I think he's an artist. I still don't think he compares with anyone I grew up watching in terms of directors. I think it's easy to sit by a computer, press buttons, and create beautiful images in terms of CGI, and he's very good with his VFX team. He's a good director. I'm not saying he's not. But none of these people directing and writing films today can compare with the greats that I grew up with. It's as simple as that. That is my fact. It may not be your fact, but that is my fact. Too many younger people today talking about the modern era of filmmakers like they're a big deal, and they're not. But what I want to appeal to people, right now I want to appeal to people who don't like Snyder, who didn't like MOS, who didn't like BVS. I want you to get your subscription ready if you're in America for HBO Max. I want you to buy it pay-per-view if you're not in America where they have HBO Max, or buy it on Blu-ray or 4K. And I want you to give this film a chance. I want you to watch it with new eyes. And I'm not saying you have to like it, but if you do change your mind about Snyder through this film, then go back, rewatch all the films, and then go onto Twitter or social media and tell us how you changed your mind with hashtagging Zack Snyder's Justice League. That would be amazing to see if there's a turnaround in opinion after Zack Snyder's Justice League is released. I believe wholeheartedly there will be. Comment down below, like, share and subscribe, and I'll be back on Friday with even more DCEU Daily. See you again soon.